Since the magical illusion of origination occurs within what has no origin, it is the ordinary confused mind that characterizes things as involving causality. What the Ati approach reveals as the absence of causes or conditions makes eminently a perfect sense, although it is unacceptable in lower approaches. The intent and conduct of Buddhas and ordinary beings are not separate, so it is the ordinary confused mind that holds samsara and nirvana to be a duality. What the Ati approach reveals as non-dual makes eminently perfect sense, though it is unacceptable in lower approaches. Given the freedom in which it is irrelevant whether or not one has realization, to believe that freedom comes about through realization is the enemy of equalness. What the Ati approach reveals as a single state of equalness makes eminently perfect sense, although it is unacceptable in lower approaches. To hold that one cannot realize the inexpressible without relying on specific means to characterize it is a fool's attitude. What the Ati approach reveals as inseparability from the ultimate makes eminently perfect sense, although it is unacceptable in lower approaches. As we continue with Longchen Rabjam, this is Darren Littlejohn. Welcome to episode 109 of the 12-Step Buddhist Podcast. Genghis Khan or Thich Nhat Hanh, how do we respond in recovery, and particularly as Buddhists in recovery? The reason why I bring up Genghis Khan, if everyone knows, Genghis Khan was a terrible ruler who was absolutely ruthless and relentless, hence the fame throughout history. And it's not really a point of that particular historical piece of information. It's really the point of Genghis Khan has an approach, and his approach is to eat it, kill it, fuck it, destroy it, take it, burn it, enslave it. There's no stopping. So we all have our own inner Genghis Khan. And, at times when I've been feeling weak in the knees, I've had a friend in recovery say something to me like, what would Genghis Khan do? Well, he would eat everyone. He would ride through and destroy everything. So that's the approach of sort of the instant reaction of self-protection, and particularly in the traumatized realm of the adverse childhood experiences as they impact our lives and our ability to regulate emotionally and to understand ourselves in relation to others, to pick up on social cues. So our response could be one of passivity. Just be a doormat, let people keep kicking you, just keep laying down, let people keep walking over you. Our approach can be kind of like I used to walk around bare knuckle, ready to go. I just wanted to punch people in the face. And I was ready to do that a lot of times throughout my life as an adult, but stemming from the abusive power dynamic in early childhood and teenage years. So for us to respond like Genghis Khan, it's a good survival skill. It's a good way to get us up out of the depression, out of the passivity. We can get tough. We can always be tougher, but tough in terms of the work ethic, not in terms of the self-recrimination, the self-loathing, the self-abuse. When we grow up with a high A score, we have a tendency to be self-loathing, to not care as much for ourselves, even if it's not an obvious conscious decision. How do we keep ourselves? What's our hygiene? What's our self-care like? How do we regulate our health? What do we do for our nutrition, our mental health, our emotional health? What do we read? What do we engage in? What do we find entertaining? In the Buddhist path, and when we say the Buddhist path, I'm really always talking about 3 different levels, but we're really not limited to a particular singular Buddhist path, but to the common teaching within all the paths and the specific teachings within them. But here we focus on the sutra level and the Mahayana level of practice. And in this case, we are confronted with the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, practices of mindfulness. And then when we go into the Mahayana, engaging or increasing or expanding our intention to the benefit of others, not just others, but all beings with equanimity. It's a higher level of giving. It's a higher level of sacrifice. And the result is higher level of attainment, faster and higher level of attainment by not trying to attain anything. So the Genghis Khan within us can be, the person who destroys lives and, goes pillaging through, any addict goes through, ripping through the lives of others. But we can keep that part of one of our personality dynamics, part of our internal family system, if you will. And we'll be talking more about that upcoming. But I've talked about voice dialogues and aspects of self for many years. So if you want, you could, do a little practice, a little exercise around your Genghis Khan and just write it out, draw it out, paint it out, spell it out, laugh it out, cook it out, dance it out, racquetball it out, weightlift it. Just get in touch with your most powerful, savage, merciless, ruthless, formidable power warrior. Find that within. If you can't find it, we can talk about that. Get in that a little bit. Imagine what it would be like. Imagine an actor or character, superhero, something like that. And write down all the aspects about that part of you. And then the other part is the Thich Nhat Hanh. So for those who don't know Thich Nhat Hanh, that's the Zen monk from Vietnam who passed a while back and spent his entire life writing, dozens, probably something like close to 100 books. And he was a real special monk, real special high compassion bodhisattva level being who engaged audiences worldwide for decades. Plum Village, there's one in San Diego, one in France, there's others, I believe. But Thich Nhat Hanh there's a fantastic book called, I think it's called The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching, something like that, Thich Nhat Hanh. And how do you spell it? Well, look at podcast.compassionaterecovery.us. I'll put a couple of Thich Nhat Hanh books on the show notes for you. You don't have to worry about spelling it. But Thich Nhat Hanh, I used to listen to back in the days of early sort of commitment to Buddhism. And he just had a way of, walk on the earth as if you're kissing the Mother Earth. Hold peace in your heart and no matter what. And the openness and the willingness and the vulnerability and the capacity to accommodate suffering without being blown away by suffering. And to maintain compassion and focus and the real application of mindfulness. So we can respond as people in recovery either way. Some combination of those. But write down that aspect, that character, that part of you, your inner monk, your inner compassion being. Say maybe your inner Mother Teresa, or however you feel kindness, you're most kind. And if you're just so bitter and so pent up, you just imagine the kindest person who finds someone on TV or in your life, and get in touch with that in the same way. Do, as I've said for many years, express this in all different dimensions: the body, of our energy, of our emotions, of our mental space. Do physical things with and from and as your, take a walk as your compassion being. Take a walk as your Thich Nhat Hanh. Do mindful walking, where you walk very, very slowly, looking at the ground and notice every single movement of your feet and miss nothing. Be fully present in the here, fully present in the now. And compassion is the only option, because in the now is only spontaneous compassion. So these are things that we can train ourselves to do, which I've been training myself to do because it's not in my natural tendency. My natural tendency is to grab a bat and do combat. And that's that. In the Dharma and in decades of recovery and decades of practice and more than a decade of yoga, you got to get soft, get older, you got to soften up, you got to soften up the edges. But that doesn't mean you dispense with Genghis Khan. It doesn't mean you put your scapegoat Thich Nhat Hanh monk at the end of a stick out there to expose their heart to the bullies. That's not what we're saying. We have to understand the two individual kind of as an aspect of ourselves. Spend the day as one. Well, be careful. But, spend some time, get in touch. You understand. Have a therapist help you. If some recovery people talk about this kind of stuff. You can do some voice dialogues if you want me to lead a group on it. Just hit me up. We can Zoom. getting in touch with two different sides of you. And just being aware of it now and working with mindfulness, mindful practice, will set the foundation and create the basis for which and by which we can just have a little space to choose the response. Like have a moment. And this is not, I'm not lecturing from a hilltop here. It's still hard work, but I can do something now that I couldn't do a long time ago. I can pause when agitated. Like it says in the 10th step of the 12 and 12 of AA, 12 steps and 12 traditions. Pause when agitated. And it also has, and what do you do when you pause? Don't just think of more ways to explode. Calculate your next smart thing you're going to say to win. Give the win to the other person. Let the other person have it. Say, okay, peace out and namaste. Peace and love, peace and love. Because there's no winning. Ultimately, if we understand the fruitlessness of all actions in samsara, that's a heavy teaching that could take a while to get down into. But if you've had it and or if you understand it, negative actions lead to negative results. Positive actions leads to positive results. All karmas are inexhaustible. I vow to liberate them all. How is this possible? Have an inhale. Hold empty, release, exhale. Linger in empty space. There's no one, nothing to hold on to. No one to do the holding or the pushing away. It takes training and internalization in such a serious and committed way that we feel it in our body. Honestly, I needed a decade of hot yoga to get where I could feel it in my body. And, 20, 30 years of mindfulness meditation where I could notice it in my body and let it and not be Genghis. And not be Genghis. And just let it pass or offer something or any one of a myriad of decisions. Well, how do we begin? Acknowledge both of these parts of ourselves. This is how we do it. This is where we can get into it and understand it and really try to embody and characterize those and express those. And you can go take your Genghis Khan to a beef rib dinner or something like that. And take your Thich Nhat Hanh to a lovely bowl of pho, perhaps. Go to the store and get a nice little the Tao of Pooh book. Someone mentioned that recently as one of their main books ever. It was one of mine too. I'll put that in the show notes. And then you want to take your Genghis Khan out to a slasher movie. Who knows? I don't know. Whatever it is for you. I don't watch any of those kind of films or anything like that. But you get where we're going with this. Get in touch with the different parts and really know them when they come on so they, are you ready? So they don't sneak up on you. And so we don't find ourselves reacting out of these without knowing why. And then later on wondering why we created such havoc and destruction. And, obviously at some point in our recovery, we're going to stop blaming everyone else, assume responsibility for what's happening. And good luck. I mean, really, we have to do all the practices, work with mindfulness, work with compassion, work with our 12 steps, work with our various deep spiritual practices. And the choice isn't really it really does suck when people say, oh, the choice is up to you. How you respond is up to you. Okay, well, look, yeah, but try to be on fire alarm 10 all the time as a kid with half, 3/4, 2/3 of brain function in the development area or that area or this area, emotional regulation, so on and so forth. It's not so easy. It's easier for you as a regulated person. For those of us who are dysregulated, you want to find out what your A score is, go over to podcast.compassionaterecovery.us. I'm working on new books. Get the old books because they're timeless and they mean something. The 12-Step Buddhist from Atria, Beyond Words, Simon & Schuster, available at all the bookstores. You can get it. Ask for it. They usually stock it, Barnes & Noble, etc. Go into your bookstore, ask for Compassionate Recovery and the 12-Step Buddhist. Compassionate Recovery does lay the groundwork for the work that we're doing going forward, and it picks up and builds upon what we did in the 12-Step Buddhist. So it's a series, and we continue with a couple of more very interesting topics as we've been hinting at and kind of leaning towards a little bit here recently. We'll leave it at that. I'm on I don't know how many day, 12, 14 something day retreat, 6 a.m. Waking up at dark 30, make the coffee, log into the Zoom, be with the Sangha, practice together, learn and study together. And that's the way I live my life as a yogi, as a Buddhist in recovery. Well, I've had a good time talking to you, and I'm a little bit subdued this week, a little bit low key. The clouds are forming, snow's coming. Things have been a little bit, well, I'd say extremely difficult, but I'm working on it. Feel free to help out at podcast.compassionaterecovery.us. There is a PayPal there. Send a little donation, keep things afloat, keep things going. All right, I'm going to hit the road and let y'all continue with your weekend. Sorry for being a day late and $1 short, but here you go, podcast 108. Until then, peace out and namaste.